Hi, everyone. Shauna Robinson, Wellness A to Z, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my next guest, one of my nearest and dearest, my favorite yoga teachers. Well, she's really a movement specialist. That's really like that's the headline. She's not. I'm not trying to box her in. Ava Moreno is hands down one of my favorites. I took her class when I first moved to LA, and I was captivated. She is just incredible and is very gifted. So, without further ado, Miss Ava, how are you?
Good. Thank you for that intro. That was so sweet.
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty well considering everything. I'm so excited to be connecting with you. That's been a beauty of this time is that I get to actually see and connect with so many people I don't usually get to talk to as much. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you're a movement specialist. You do a lot of yoga. You teach bar. You were a dancer,
yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yeah.
So and your knowledge of anatomy is like unparalleled. When you start riffing on it, I'm like, okay, she's in flow, and it's amazing. And I'm like, you're in. That's your why. Like there is, the anatomy of the body is like that's your jam. So how did that all start? How did that come to be?
Well, it started through my dance training. I was dancing since I could walk, like since I could move, I was dancing and moving. And we learned a lot in dance actually about the body. It was my teachers, it was very important to them that we understood like how things move and where turnout came from and where the movement originated. First of all, for movement quality, but also just for safety and longevity of our bodies. But I dislocated my knees excessively starting around age 13, and it was at that point that I started researching it. So like once I dislocated my knee, I was like, okay, what happened, why did this happen, and did my own research. And I would have, my dad would laugh because he would come to appointments with me and like the orthopedic surgeon, and we would just be like going back and forth, and he would have no idea what we were talking about, but I was like so involved because I wanted to understand like the injury and the why so that I could get back to dancing as soon as possible. So it's through my own injuries that I started to learn about it. I also have torn labrums in both hips. I've dislocated shoulders. I have a little bit of from like hyperextension in my spine from years of some gymnastics, a little bit of spinal stuff, and just major hypermobility all around and severe hip dysplasia. So through that, I've seen like if I'm from Boston and Boston Children's Hospital, amazing orthopedic team. I've seen almost every single one of their specialists for like different joint stuff. So it's really just been my own injuries that kind of provoked me to learn more and to explore. And it's always been something that interests me and fascinates me. And like I've done many trainings and in school and learned anatomy from different teachers' perspectives, and that's always cool. Is to like relearn in different ways and have teachers who are like use a lot of anatomical language versus teachers who make it a lot more accessible to their students and seeing how they integrate it. So it's just always been something that fascinates me to like understand the unknown of my own body because it's scary. You know, you injure yourself, you hurt yourself, you don't want to like make things worse, you don't want it to happen again. I found that for me, just like it gives me peace of mind to know what's going on, and that's how it originated.
I love that. I mean, I'm the same way with health and wellness and Chinese medicine. I can just, go off and, I did not go to school for that. And I mean, when I first met you, I was like, oh my God, she must have gone to school for that. And it's just, there's just such passion behind it. And, I love what you said. We don't have an owner's manual for our body. We don't really know what's going on. And so there is this timidness that people have about, should I move? Should I not do it? Oh, I shouldn't go to yoga. And you do bring that into class where it's like, no, and you teach to such a range of people, and it's amazing. um I would love to hear a little bit more about that process, because you kind of, I mean, you do talk to people before they go into class, but like there is just this intimacy that you also bring. So it's not like, okay, if you're teaching to someone that hasn't ever practiced before to somebody, it's just there. It's amazing. Anyway, I can't speak. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. I really like to teach my students to listen to their own bodies. So, you've taken my yin training, we talked a lot about human variation, and how every single body is different. And what we see in a skeleton like model is just an example of like one person. I did a training recently with Bernie Clark, who wrote the yin yoga, like the complete guide to yin yoga, which you may have read. He's like, it's like major person in the yin yoga world, and he has like actual models, skeletons of real people,
Mm.
that their bodies have been like this, like we had a spine of like an 86-year-old Asian woman who like had major arthritis, and you can see like, so cool to see the variation. And I learned a lot more about like the details and the actual ranges and the different degrees and the different joints of why people have different ranges of motion. And that's where the thing is, like, we as teachers going into the space just don't know. We don't have an X-ray machine, we don't have an MRI, we can't know what's going on in their bodies, we can't know where their end range is. So what we can do is we can teach them to listen to their bodies and to feel. So it's like, what are you feeling? Right? As the question, instead of like, you should be feeling this. Or it's like, instead of assuming that because I feel something, they're feeling the same thing. I had to learn very early on in my teaching that because I'm a dancer and I'm very hypermobile doesn't mean everybody else is too. So it's like, why can't you do that? I can do that. Or like, oh, I feel this, but you feel something different. And so what makes me nervous in my body is different than necessarily what makes somebody else nervous in their body. Because I have had certain injuries, I do know that other people exist out there with those same things. So I can speak to that, but that doesn't mean it applies to every single person. So especially in yin, which like, we both love, there's a lot of time and space to be able to teach people like, here are the different options you can play with. Like, this is kind of what we're looking for ish. Like, here's the target area. Like, here's some ways you might be able to experience that. If you're feeling this, and knowing for me where those end ranges are in the hips, that could be possible. Like how people, if they're feeling pinching in their hip, what that means. So by understanding the kind of general impingements in the body and different ranges of motion, I can help people like navigate and guide their way into where they're feeling. But eventually people start to learn where their own end range is. They learn like, if I'm feeling it in the direction of sensation or against the direction of sensation, if that means there's compression versus tension, and like what those words mean. As you've, I'm sure, experienced in your body of like, you've hit an end range because you're feeling something, and like it's in, if you're folding forward, if it's in the front, right? If it's in the back, it's like, oh, you have more range of motion. So the best thing I think, like as a yoga teacher, and especially with yin, when there's the time and space to explore it, is to like offer your students what they're looking for, right? And what they could be feeling, and like that it's okay what you're feeling, and like how do we work around that? Is it pain? Is it sensation? Like, is it discomfort? And I speak a lot in my classes, and by offering all of those things over and over and over again, people start to learn about their own bodies. So it's like really just like teaching your students to think for themselves and to listen to their bodies, which takes a while, like it takes building trust. And so I don't assume when somebody comes in who's brand new that like they know their body, and I don't assume that they don't know their body. So I like let people kind of, the more I've been teaching, like the more I take a backseat to like trusting them and like let them be in charge of themselves, but also like offer the space and like my knowledge and what could be going on when they have questions. So I'm like, if you need me, I'm here. If you're feeling something funky, if you're not sure, like I'm here. But I also like let them explore that. And that's kind of cool to be able to see people like navigate and figure out their options and their pathways that they don't even know that they have access to, right? They don't know they have like another choice than like the one version of deer pose that they've seen before.
Oh, that's my favorite. I love deer pose. I do. I know. I'm like one of the few people. People are like, "Ugh, that sucks." I'm like, "No, let's open the hips. It's so great. It's
So
juicy. It
good.
feels great."
So
But I know people are, it's tight there. So, you were just talking about like you do. There's a lot of not necessarily hands on, but you do like to see, and you're really good in classroom. We don't have that right now, but you've shifted. I mean, like you were already sort of building this online learning repository. I can't speak, it's like I'm very tongue tied today, but um you had to make this big shift really quickly, and you've done it really well. I'd love to hear about like how you're doing that. I've been a beneficiary of taking your online classes, and they're incredible, but that didn't, how did that come to be? I mean, you're using a medium that is, yoga teaching is not something we all thought of as like, oh, you can work from home. I'm just going to phone in. I
no,
feel good. No,
it's, and most yoga teachers, like that's not what they're looking for,
no.
like we teach yoga because we want the in-person connection. We want to like connect with people and see the bodies and be able to like be in the space together. So you're right, it's like not something that we imagine we could really do from home, and it's not something that I like really strived to be doing. I look for the in-person connection. Like I like to be in the space with people. You're right. I think Zoom is amazing because it's given me the platform to like be able to see people. And I have taught some classes via Instagram Live. I have taught via Facebook Live. I've taught via YouTube Live. I've for different studios and different, worked with different partners that I teach for. But Zoom is my favorite because I can see people. And if they do choose, most people choose to keep their video on. What's so cool is that I can see them move. And so the good news is that I had been doing some online privates before. I was using Skype. I've been using Skype for about 4 years because my own trainer and personal trainer and physical therapist uses it. When she moved across the country, she maintained most of her clients via online, and so I learned from her and been working with her and trusted that that could be done. So I was already offering that. That's obviously much easier one to one, or even just small group because then there's not so many bodies to look at. But I've been lucky that my classes via Zoom, my public classes, have been filled with people who take my class regularly and not. So I can rely on some people in the class who know my teaching and know my sequencing and know where I'm going or like understand my cues. And so I'll have people like pin their video. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
need- as you've seen, so I don't even run my mat the whole time. That way I can like be on the mat, go up to the thing. And it's required a lot more awareness with placement of like, where do I tell them to put their device? Which way is the mat facing? Like it's all instead of like a studio and everybody faces the same way, it's like now I have to think about from the get-go, like every piece of that and moving around the mat, facing the device. So I've been like figuring out ways to sequence where they end up always turning to face the computer and like thinking, and that's been so good for my creative aspect of my brain that wasn't getting stimulated in that way to another level where I have to like think even more about how I can be creative and make it accessible. It's definitely a challenge. And there's people who are brand new to my classes and are sometimes like, what's going on? But that's why it's so great that I get to be there and watch them. But it just means like multitasking in a way of like right and left, thinking about where you are in the sequence, watching the bodies. But I think it's practice. You know, I've been teaching like about 14 online classes a week
Mm-hmm.
for the last month or so. And it's just with time, you know, kind of getting into the rhythm. And then the more people who are taking regularly kind of get where we're going. And people are so forgiving, you know, with like technical stuff, music, people are just like so grateful to be moving that while I obviously want to present my best work, there's not a lot of pressure with like the logistics of things. And that's really nice that it doesn't feel like there's as much of that. It's like, it's okay if something we get messed up a little bit or someone's facing the wrong way or like that it's not a big deal because we just get to move.
It is. I mean, it's great. And I love that you have a beginner's mindset. I was thinking last time I took your class, I'm like, oh, this is a really unfortunate view of me. It's like crotch and boobs. You're welcome. I was like, oh my God, this is so okay. I know. So there's probably a lot of that. And, yeah, I'm not going to like take a screenshot and send that around. But I'm like, oh, that's probably something that that we all deal with. But I did notice, you said put your device on the right side of the mat or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, that was, I hadn't thought about that. I had, positioned it at the front, just sort of like, all right, the teacher's always at the front of the room. We're, doing this. And so I applauded the creativity. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
So you talked about, people that may not have taken your classes
Hmm.
before. And so, I wanted to talk a little bit about, speaking of beginner's mindset, people are starting to try, new things all the time. So like what advice or what guidance would you give people that are, thinking about trying yoga classes? Maybe not yours, any, sort of online yoga classes. I mean, everybody should take her class. They're amazing. But what, how would you suggest getting into it, especially because, they may be timid about their body. Maybe they do have an injury. I mean, how are you navigating that, or what guidance would you
Totally.
give, or both?
Well, what's been cool is that there's again no pressure and nobody's watching you, you know, other than the teacher. Like I've been noticing people are more willing to try new shapes. They're willing to go for arm balances because it's like you're in your own home. If you fall, get a pillow, right? And like it's not as big of a deal. People aren't worried about like falling onto the person next to them or like embarrassing themselves. So there is this like aspect of, I've been oming in most of my classes, beginning and end, and like you can turn yourself on mute and nobody, you can be as loud as you want and not be worried about how you sound, which like we're always as teachers trying to get people out of, but this is the time. I've been encouraging people to try it. So in a sense, like I said, my creativity and like with sequencing, I'm almost like going for it more because people aren't as afraid to try things. So I applaud people who are trying and stepping into new spaces and new teachers, new practices, including yoga. I think it is helpful to have your video on if you are going to take a Zoom class. I have some friends and students like, oh no, I'm not ready. My video. I'm like, that's fine. But then also like, they're like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm like, then I can't see you. You know what I mean? Like I have no idea what's going on, which is fine. And that's like totally your discretion. But I do recommend people who are newer to it, and if they're going to take a live class and you can find a Zoom class that works. I know sometimes the timing and all this stuff, there's so many variables, but if you're able to find a Zoom class, it's one of the better options because the teacher can see you and then can let you know, like can verbally correct and adjust. So then you can learn if you're not familiar with Sanskrit and like terminology or just the way things move and the shapes, like I can have eyes on you. And so, yes, while it's a lot of bodies to look at, like I try to make sure that I'm checking in, especially with the people that I'm not as familiar with to watch. And people, just like with any practice regularly, you can pick things up pretty quickly once you kind of get into a habit and a pattern if you're working with similar teachers. So I think it's just like go for it. If you are able to find a platform where the teacher can see you, that's best. Also, a lot of teachers, including myself, are offering one-on-one and small group, which are more affordable than like usually than in person. If you are able to even just do one or two, just to kind of like get comfortable with it, or you aren't familiar with the shapes, I would say like if that makes people feel more comfortable, it's a really good option right now during this time to like get into the practice. And then there are teachers who are offering like beginner classes. All my classes are all levels, so I think it's like anybody can come to any class. And with injuries, I have some students who will like chat privately, be like, "Oh, I have an injury." I'm like, "You do you." It's just like my regular classes. Like, honor your body. If you need modifications, like let me know and I'll help you. But I also trust people to like listen to their bodies. So the good news is, again, like since I have a bit of a background with injuries, if people are feeling nervous about that and they want advice, or someone was like, "I'm really struggling with my shoulders in plank and down dog, can you offer some tips in your class to help lengthen out of wrists and shoulders?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And people can like request and like reach out like, "Hey, I really want to work on hips," or "I really want to work on this arm balance." Like, I'm encouraging people to offer feedback because this is really a time that's serving our students, that we're really looking to like offer them what they need. So I just say go for it. Go
I
for
agree.
it. You know, you-
And turn your video on. Literally, no one's looking at you.
exactly.
No one's looking at you in regular class anyway. Like, what
Exactly.
looking at you? I promise.
Everybody's just trying to survive. You know what I mean? Like everybody, I'm not gonna. I'm like just trying to like survive in that hot room.
I do miss it though. Yes, I do know, we're all trying to survive, but I'm like, "Oh my god, I cannot wait till like, you know, soaking wet hair and sweat dripping off." Literally no one's looking at you. They are just
No
literally.
one's. Everybody's just trying to focus on themselves and get through. It's like no one's worried about how you sound or how you look. If anything, like the people who are like louder and like less inhibited, like encourage people to do the same. Like that
Mhm.
energy is contagious. I encourage people to be audible, right? To like make noise, like breathe, like let some stuff, some energy and prana go. And that encourages people to do the same. Like I have some communities where that's like a more normalized thing, and people who step like people step like, "Oh, this is what we're doing. It's just
Yeah.
what we do." They're less intimidated if like that's the culture. Actually, it's funny. I have a student who like has been cranking up the heat in his house and refuses to practice unless the heat. It's like no cold yoga.
I'm so jealous. I keep asking my mom, I'm like, "Do you mind if I turn on?" She's like, "Literally, no." So I'm waiting. It is getting warmer here, so hopefully, one of these days, but it's cool. We'll get back there, and I think we'll just appreciate it a lot more, when we get there for sure.
It's interesting to see the difference, right? Practicing without the people who are used to it, your body, like what is really required to warm up in your body, and the longer
Mhm.
practices for people who don't usually take hour and a half practices, right? Like that we have 75-minute, hour and a half, even some teachers 2-hour practices. So like it's definitely good, I think, for people who are used to that. And I have some people like reliant on the heat, and I'm like, we gotta experience that in our bodies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna make us appreciative for those of us who practice in the heat and who want that.
Yeah, I mean, change is good, and I've definitely practiced both heated and non-heated,
Yes,
over the course of my, yoga life. But I mean, I definitely prefer the heat. But it's like, all right, this is what we're doing right now, and
totally.
I don't have any cute yoga clothes right now because I didn't pack accordingly. Well, no one's seeing me except you. Just the really lovely camera angles. But I mean, going back to the it's funny because like it's also like no one, not only is no one looking at you, no one's like recording you and like sending your tape to like an A&R rep for, that you're not getting a record deal, so don't worry about it.
Yep.
Um calm down. Is the thing. But yeah, just try it. And just, do what you can do. I mean, it's amazing how, I not that I can't do things now, but my body has changed. We're not moving as much. We're so used to being so young and so up and so like go, 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 go. And now it's like, oh wow, like this used to be a little easier and it's not. And just like meeting myself where I am and not beating myself up because, it's not like, well, I haven't gone to yoga because, I just haven't wanted to. I haven't gone to yoga because the studio's closed. But
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And it's like being in that space of like, what does it feel like to not be in that state?
Hmm.
Might be
Yeah.
good, right? Like to experience that. I totally feel that. Yeah, it's hard for people. It's really hard for people, but it's important.
It is
Like,
important. It is important to just, yeah, I mean, it's a different perspective.
yeah,
And perspective is reality. So as, we've all learned and, we've all lived through that. So what guidance would you give, people just in general to do like, I know we just talked a lot about, getting just comfortable with taking a class, just doing it. I guess, the other thing, guidance, I don't have a mat, I don't have blocks, I don't have a
mhm,
bolster, I don't have any of these things. What are some, prop ideas that you give to your students that like you can do this literally anywhere? You don't need
totally.
fancy.
Absolutely. I've been really also more creative in my sequencing of like just not relying on props as much. Like, you know me, like I, especially like in vinyasa based classes, I usually in studio like heavily use them and integrate them because I want people to learn that they're not a crutch, right? That they're
Yeah.
there to support them and that we get to get creative with props. So it's been a big shift for me to move away from not relying on them. But what's so great is that people have so many household items. Like we've all heard of like instead of blocks or weights, if people are doing like a weighted practice, like cans of food, soup, beans, if you're lucky enough to have cans of food right now, water bottles filled with water or just for balance. But also for yin, what's been so great is that people have more props than we usually have in like a heated studio setting, like pillows, cushions, blankets, towels, like scarves, all kinds of stuff that you can like use to prop your body up, and those same things can apply in a more yang based practice as well. What's been so cool for yin is I'm just like grab all the things like you can find and like you get to like make yourself a fort, and just get comfy, and experiment with that because in the heated practice like those would we have blocks and straps and like there's not as many and maybe some towels but not as many options. So those are the big ones. I think people have been getting really creative. Instead of a strap, I've been like a longer hand towel or like a scarf or a belt I've been having people use for any type of strap and shoulder work or hamstring work. um, and then just like seeing how things feel without. It's like, okay, if you don't have anything available to you literally, and we're in like a half split variation, it's like bend your knee a little bit, see what happens if you walk forward or walk back. Like we get to really customize the shapes to our bodies even more because it's just with what we have. But I found the cushions have been the biggest thing. Even cushions on either side of you, like that's the jam.
So do you get to take classes or are you just, because you teach a lot during the week. Are you getting
I
to take any classes for yourself?
I do, especially like the last week I didn't get to as much, but before that, one of my teachers, Rebecca Rivera, who also teaches for Hot 8 Yoga and has been doing Zoom classes as well, she's been teaching quite a bit, and I was able to take a lot of her classes, and that's been awesome because she has a similar structure where she can see us and so she can talk to us, and it holds me more accountable in my practice. I find that I'm much more involved. She's also just like a sequencing genius, and so I find like she always sets you up so well and so safely for where you're going. Very creative sequencing, and transitions. I always draw a lot of inspiration from her. It keeps things fresh for me of just like possibilities of ways of moving and linking these together, which as a teacher I think is important to be around people who inspire you. She's been awesome. Both Hot 8 and Soho have been doing like live classes via Instagram. Soho just switched over to a platform for YouTube Live. Hot 8 has their on demand. I've been able to take a couple of Soho teachers' classes when the times work. Um, yeah, those have been the main ones. I also do a couple of sessions a week with my own trainer and physical therapist for my own movement and like a lot of somatic work and eccentric control work. So I've been able to keep that up, which has been good. Um, and some days, when I'm teaching, it's like I want to like in some of those yin shapes. It's like I get everybody into it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get into it too. You know what I mean? Like you're good. All right, I'm gonna hop into it also. So
Yeah.
that's nice because that's one that I never get to take usually in pre-quarantine was
Yeah.
yin. Let's take her back as yin last week, and then that's been a nice one to be in this space. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is forced yin time. We're nourishing our yin essence. I don't think that there's an accident. I don't like what's going on, but I think that it is forcing us to, you know, hashtag CTFD, as I like to say, calm the fuck down.
I love it.
true. We need to. I mean, like I've been saying it forever. We've talked about it,
Yes,
for like a million times, but I think that that's
really.
what we're doing right
It
now,
is.
calming
It's like
down.
it really is, and it's so interesting because right before this, like, as you know, I have been, like, traveling a lot, and I was doing trainings and leading trainings. I had, like, a surgery, like, I since really October, like, end of October is when I finished leading a yin training, and, like, then after that was just, like, not really in town, like, for any full week. I was, like, always going somewhere, and I had just come back from we had celebrated our 5th year anniversary in Ojai, and it was like we came back on Wednesday, and then Thursday I was like, okay, Ava, like put on your big girl pants. Like it was March, and I was like, it is time to go. Like there is no end in sight. Like you are powering through back to full speed ahead. And I was like trying to figure out how I was gonna get the momentum back to teach like 20 plus classes a week. And then Friday Soho closed. Sunday everything else closed. And I was like, and I was like, part of me was like, oh no, I was depending on this. But at the same time, I was like, even though I've been out of town, I haven't really rested my body. You know, the traveling is very yang energy and like
Mhm.
hadn't rested and hadn't been in my own space. And I'd been like needing that to like clean my house and like to take care of things and to just, and that was given to me was just to like slow down. And again, exactly, we've talked about it. It's not something that comes naturally to me. And so I've been trying not to complain and just sit in being like, hey, I asked for this universe, like, what are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? Like, and I've kept myself, to be fair, I've kept myself fairly busy, which is like typical of me. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
you pivoted fast. I mean, like you did. Like it was just like, okay, she's doing like newsletter, online classes, building this out. I was like, I first of all, I wasn't surprised because like I know you and I know that's just how you roll. And I was just like, of course. And of course you're like killing it at the online teaching game. But like I do love that you get to do it in your space. And so like there is like, you get to clean. And I get it because I hadn't been in my own space for much of this year. This year is about weirdly transition and change and yeah, which we're all going through in some way, shape, or form, obviously with what's going on. But I think even leading up to it, we all were going through some sort of weirdness. So yeah, it's amazing.
it's so needed. I'm just
It
been
is so
trying to spend
needed.
that and take advantage of the time. It's like, when is this ever going to happen again? I mean, maybe
Hopefully
it will.
not. Hopefully
It
it
probably
won't. I know. Please let's not. I want to go to the store without a mask on. I want to like yeah. Well, first of all, my mom and I aren't even going out. We're just getting everything delivered because it's just like why? We're in a little suburb of Sacramento, so we are lucky in that like anything that we want to be delivered, there's no shortage. Like we are rich in toilet paper. Which
is.
I know. I shouldn't brag about that, but it is it's nice it is good forced downtime and it is so nice to connect with you and be able to take your classes because I mean that definitely is that was part of my routine, that was part of my thing, and so it's good to just get to see you and take your classes and connect and all that other stuff. And if anybody wants to take your classes and wants to find you online, where can they find you?
So I'm building a website right now that will be out soon. I believe it's theworkbyava.com, but I'm not 100% sure. I have this wonderful person helping me out with all my online stuff. I have a newsletter. So if you want to be in the newsletter, and I don't bombard you, I send out emails about
Yeah.
twice a week, and it's with the schedule and like some thoughts and reflection. And I have like the work by Ava, like ideas, journaling, meditation, and kind of prompts. My email is Ava, AVA, another V, Moreno, Moreno, at gmail.com. You can email me. You can also find me on Instagram, Ava Moreno. And there in my bio, there's a link to add your name for the email list. And that's the best way to be involved because I send out information about the email list when I launch my website, and more online content is coming very soon, and more online options for people that will all be sent through that. So that's what I'm doing, yeah, for now. And I make it pretty easy for people. People have expressed that like it's pretty simple to register, and I mean, I hope that's been your experience. I don't want to.
It's been easy and I'm pretty special. Like there's
Awesome.
that I wonder about myself.
I'm so glad. I don't want it to be complicated. I want it to be
It's
accessible
not.
for
It's
everybody.
very easy.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's
Good, good,
very easy, and her classes are amazing, you guys, and I'll include all of that in the comments below. I'll include a link to her email sign up in my link tree, and Ava, it was just the best to catch up with you and see your beautiful face. And I can't
Thank
wait to take more of your classes. And thank you
thank
guys. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
thank you.